Welcome to Not Only Books, episode number 5. I'm Craig Kubik.
And I'm Jason Runnels.
Today we have the topic of special collections. Jason, what is a special collection?
Generally a special collection is designated by a person's name or a location or maybe a movement that had some prominence or held some important role for a library or an institution or for a church or for an organization in the city. So they might determine that there's something special about these materials, and then they would donate them to a library.
So we use the term special collection, and one of our previous episodes we used the word archive. So
Right.
is there some distinction between an archive type item and a special collection item? Or do they overlap? Are there similarities? Are there big differences? How do we kind of facet those out as librarians and those who might be researching? How can they understand an archive item and a special collection item?
Well, an archive item generally requires or needs special care. We would assume a control of humidity and temperature, that it might be sequestered from public view in the sense that they just can't go up and grab something out of it and look at it. So you're trying to take care of that archive because it's either valuable or fragile. Now, a special collection may include things that are not required to be cared for in such a way. Here at Southwestern Seminary, there are a number of special collections that are out in the public stacks. The music library of this institution has a number of collections that way. But then again, there are also some special collections that are sequestered but not in an archival manner. They're just kept in a certain place so that the access to them can be restricted.
And it also sometimes has to do with the preservation, because you want those to have maybe also special temperature and climate similar to the archive.
Right, right.
Well, you have brought for today some items from a special collection. So let's
Yes.
talk about what you have and who it is that these items are from.
Okay, well, this is the some of the items from the George C. Stebbins collection that's housed at the music library at the campus of Southwestern Seminary. And so I'll start with a little bit about who Stebbins was. Stebbins was a famous hymn writer, hymn editor, compiler from the late 19th, early 20th century. He was primarily connected with the Baptist Church, but he had lots of dealings and workings with evangelistic personalities outside of the Baptist Church. His main focus was music, and as I've discovered, looking through the materials and reading different things about him, he really did feel like music was his calling in the role of what he should be doing for Jesus. Okay, so when he was 12, he attended his first singing school. And so a singing school, especially back in the 19th century, would have been an itinerant music director traveling around to different churches or different towns and spending 3 or 4 days teaching the people how to read music and how to sing music, so that they could sing songs more easily in church, in worship services, but also it created a community feel for some activity and artistic expression that they were able to be a part of.
You use the term community choirs, so there were these groups of people singing across the United States, or what happened?
Well, there were community choirs. They were more organized, especially tended to be in larger cities. Like the Handel and Haydn Society in Boston had been around for quite some time at this point in the late 19th century. You had other ones in New York. There was even some down in like New Orleans and Kansas City, and some of the larger places that people would have been gathering. But in this sense, it was a more rural community sense. So the towns within a 30-mile radius would have this person travel around and teach them. And then they might get together and have some sort of large event once a year or something. But generally, it was for that smaller community. And so he went to one of those and discovered his love for music and for singing in the church. And so he continued with that. When he was 16, his family got their first piano. And it was actually for his sister. But of course, if a piano's in the house, people are going to play it, and he started learning to play the piano. When he was 21, he started taking voice. He would travel. He was born up in northern New York, right, very close to Lake Ontario, but he would travel to a larger city not too far away so that he could take voice lessons. And it was also at this time that he got married. So when he was 21, he got married. And then, soon after that, he took a job in Chicago with the music firm Lyon and Healy. Lyon and Healy make harps. That's one of their big things today. But they also do a lot of other musical things. They published a lot of music, and he was able to work with them. In 1872, while in Chicago, after working at a Baptist church there, he had put together a male quartet that would sing hymns. And so there was enough success with that he took that male quartet to the Illinois State Sunday School Convention and had his group sing as part of the music element in those worship services. And it was successful enough that soon after, other publishers like Ira Sankey and James McGranahan published their own collection of male hymns for the male voice, or four-part, because that was something new in the 1870s that hadn't been done before. And you have that tradition even coming from Germany at this time. A lot of the male choruses popping up because that was a very European thing to do. And so, 1874, he moved back to northern New York, and then in 1876, he made some connections with major evangelists, D.W. Whittle, D.L. Moody, Ira Sankey, P.P. Bliss. Those are kind of the big ones that he associated with. He would travel with them for their different revival meetings they would have around the country. He went to England with them. He went to the Middle East with them. And so he really built up his friendship with them, which helped establish his connection with music publishing, and particularly with publishing sacred songs.
So you mentioned Moody as being an evangelist. So then did he more or less become a music evangelist? Could you apply such a term?
You could. He definitely spent his time playing piano in services. He would sing in services. So I would say, because they were evangelistic services, and based on the type of literature that we see being written by Stebbins, yes, he was a music evangelist in the late 19th century.
When we think of evangelists such as that, I have the idea of tent revivals. Was what happened, or was he actually singing in churches that had revival or evangelistic meetings?
They would meet in churches, but not just churches, because a lot of times the churches were too small. So they would meet in auditoriums or larger spaces. But it was along those same lines. Maybe not so much the camp meeting revival feel,
Yeah.
but more of the Spurgeon type feel where you have the large crowds and everybody's singing, but it's still an evangelistic event. And so they would do that in the northern United States. They would travel around, and he would be part of that music team depending on who he's with. Yeah. And so Stebbins died in 1945, and was very involved with music pretty much up until that point in his death. He was still writing and publishing, and then we started to get this collection being built. So now the collection actually was not created by Stebbins. So there was a man named James B. Clayton who was a pastor, and he started working at the Library of Congress. But he had an admiration for Stebbins and his music. He felt that Stebbins was one of the pinnacle evangelistic composers of this time. And so he had the desires to start collecting things connected with Stebbins.
So you mentioned this collection is about Stebbins. So that is different in many ways from archives, which are often the papers of that person.
Right.
This is papers or books or materials, whatever you are going to show us today about Stebbins.
Right. So Clayton started to gather materials, primarily books that Stebbins had edited or compiled, or maybe that had his hymns included in them, and started collecting them at the Library of Congress. He actually did communicate with Stebbins, and Stebbins contributed numerous items to the collection. Unfortunately, we don't really know which ones he added, because not everything had his signature in it. Things have been lost over time. Things have been added over time, and there's just no way of really saying, oh, well, this item was Stebbins. Instead, we have a collection that represents Stebbins primarily, but includes things that he was involved in or with. And so one thing that Clayton did, and I want to point this out now because we see some large examples, is he created notebooks. And the notebooks included gospel hymns or hymns of other types that he felt were important. In some respects, because they're connected to Stebbins or some of those other evangelistic musicians that I mentioned. In other ways, because he wanted to have a topical collection. So this item here is one of the topical collections that Clayton put together. And the title here says Christmas Songs from Many Sources, Christmas 1932. And so what Clayton did was he would cut out the hymn and glue it on the piece of paper. And generally that was it. He didn't give commentary. He just cut out numerous hymns and put them on there. And so everything in this one deals with Christmas. Now what we see is that it's not just music that he included, but here is a program.
That included this particular hymn or
included some of them, not necessarily this one. It just fell under his idea of this is important.
I see.
And so this one was from the Mount Holyoke College Carol Choir, 90 voices. This is their Christmas program. Tells you what they sang. We don't see Stebbins over here. We see more traditional things, Corelli, Ravel. So we see some classical composers, as well as things that are maybe not as classically or directed, but are well known. Shepherd's Christmas Song, Angels We Have Heard on High. So the collections that are glued together sometimes are just appearing to be random items, but he does have a theme. So this one is Christmas. These larger ones are just various alphabetical listings of hymns. So he would try to get as many representations as he could of a title. So in some cases you may have the same title but 4 or 5 different tunes.
So there's not exact, if we listen to it, it would not be the same, but
Right.
some of the words would be.
Right. And some of these may have changed popular tunes over time. So it could have started out with one tune, and then depending on whose publication and which denomination, it could have taken on another tune and become popular there. So he did this. There are over 100 notebooks in this collection of these types of collections of cut out hymns.
Yeah, so let's clarify. You're telling me that this collection has 100 notebooks like that,
Yes.
stored in the Bold Music Library.
Yes. And
That's a
that's
lot.
just part of it. So then we also have a collection like this one that Clayton put together, and here we have Clayton's handwriting telling us that this collection is all about numerals. So for this one, he collected hymns that reference numbers in the title or the first line.
Okay.
So we can see examples of that by Holy, 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 and he has a note, 3 persons.
3 persons, yeah.
Yeah. This one is 12. I can't read it upside down. 12 valiant saints or apostles. The Son of God goes forth to war, a kingly crown to gain. So he has it underlined here, 12 valiant saints. 100 years. And so this one is about 100 years to come. Just another topical collection, as opposed to the alphabetical collection that he would have. But it's estimated that he truly destroyed hundreds of books to make these scrapbooks that he's done. So scrapbooks are very common in archive collections because somebody sees this as important, puts it in there, and we want to be able to go back and look at what they had.
I don't know of another source or a modern source that does this kind of thing electronically. This seems very unique for research.
Yes, there are a couple of hymn websites where you might be able to do a keyword search, but for some of these, notice it's down in the text where he finds the number, so it might not be as easy to locate. But you could do a keyword search and find this, but it would take a long time to compile that. This item here is just another collection, and this one there are a number of these. I think there are 10 of these collections. Everything in this collection is connected with Grant Colfax Toller, and he was connected with a publishing company but also involved in the production of sacred music as well as secular music as well. But here we see an actual manuscript of a piece of music. So we have an original piece of music, and then additionally the text that would have gone with it. And so this is by Edith S. Tillotson, Something to Do for the Father in Heaven. It was published in 1908 by Toller Meredith Company, so the company related to Toller. But here is the music, and it has E.S. Tillotson up here, but we have the music without the words. So we actually have this handwritten manuscript that we can go back and look at as well.
There's a little treasure inside a scrapbook.
Right.
You'll be surprised, as we all are.
Yeah.
As librarians, sometimes we find a treasure
Right.
hidden in unexpected places.
Very unexpected places. So Clayton put together all of these scrapbooks as well as gathering all the books, housed them at the Library of Congress, but they wound up being moved early on to the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C.
In Washington, all right?
And they were housed in a room in the basement.
That doesn't sound good.
It doesn't sound good, but it's not as bad as it sounds, because the room was actually controlled. They did have restricted access. It wasn't in a damp and dark
Very good.
hole. But it was being held there because they felt like it was a better place to hold that related to the worship services than over in the actual Library of Congress. Clayton passed on, and the next person to take over was Leonard Ellenwood, who worked for the Library of Congress as well. He started out in the music division, eventually became head of the humanities division, but he oversaw the maintenance of this collection. So it was not being added to intentionally once Clayton died, but Ellenwood maintained the collection, made sure that it was being cared for. And he was quoted as having said that the whole time that he was there, no one looked at this collection except a group of nuns who came over to study gospel hymnody one time.
Oh,
And
not what you would expect, nuns for evangelistic.
Right. But he maintained that collection. And then in 88, William J. Reynolds,
1988.
1988, yes, sorry, jumping way ahead. William J. Reynolds, who was a professor here at the campus of Southwestern in the music school, professor of hymnology. He had been president of the Hymn Society. He got a letter from Ellenwood asking if Southwestern would like to have this collection. And so that little statement is in this dissertation that's been written about the Stebbins collection. And so the letter from Ellenwood says, "Would you people down there at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary at Fort Worth be interested in acquiring the George C. Stebbins Memorial Collection?" And then he tells about how no one has visited it. A pressing need for additional shelf space now compels us to seek a relocation to a place where it might prove more useful. And so Ellenwood thought of us based on his communications with Reynolds in the past. And Dr. Reynolds went and talked to Carl Rotenberry, who was the librarian here at that time, and they agreed and were able to get it under our purview. Rotenberry had to go and box it up and drive it back. It was about 20 boxes, I believe they said, but he drove it back, and then they started working on getting it cataloged. It was housed in the main library for a number of years until the music library was built next to the music building. And so then it was put into the archive room of the music library, the Bold Music Library, where it's been since that time, so since the 90s.
So you have directed us to its organization, and then it's owned by the Library of Congress, and now here at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Who actually owns it? Is it owned by the Library of Congress or is it owned by Southwestern?
Um, as far as I can tell, it is owned by the Library of Congress, but it is on permanent loan to Southwestern. Now that may have changed over time, and I may not have been able to find some letter that was passed on, but I believe that's the case because we have also received additional items in the past 10 years from the Library of Congress. They sent, back in the early 2010s, a newspaper that was part of this collection. It has nothing to do with Stebbins, has nothing to do with church music, but it was a newspaper that had the gift plate. See if I can find that gift plate. Here it is. Had this gift plate from the Washington Cathedral Library put on it, telling them that it was part of the Stebbins collection. And so they communicated with us and sent that item to us out of the blue.
It does sound like they know about it, they are tracking it, and they're well aware
Yes.
of where it's at.
Yes. Unfortunately, like I said, we don't know what actually was missing at any point. Things were added, things were taken away. Clayton cut up many things. He had duplicate copies, but we don't know what was there and what wasn't. But we assume that what we have is all that has a connection to it. If anything else is at the Library of Congress, then it hasn't been found and sent to us. So we assume this to be the complete collection of what's left.
So if we can wrap up our session today, how would you advise a researcher if they are approaching a special collection like this? What would you tell them to be aware about interpreting the contents of this material?
You've got to be careful about assuming that what is in a collection was always intended by the person it's named for. As we know, this is the Stebbins collection, but James Clayton put it together. So he had an agenda with what he was doing. And as we've seen, it's not all Stebbins material. So to assume that looking at this collection, it's all connected with Stebbins would be wrong. So when you go into a collection, especially one that maybe has scrapbooks, you need to stop and think who created the scrapbook and what was their purpose, so that you don't superimpose an assumption about one person onto another. Additionally, you need to remember that there could be tiny little specks of gold in all of the sand that you're having to sift through. And so being careful to look at each item, to really examine what's there, will give you a better idea of the purpose of the collection and how it can be used in a more full way, I think. One last thing that I want to point out in this collection. So far, everything has been kind of secondhand, but we do have letters, and these are always fun.
So letters would be a primary document.
That's right. So far, we've had very much secondary and tertiary, minus the score. But here we have letters from people to Stebbins or to Stebbins' wife. And so this first one is a letter from D.L. Moody to George Stebbins. And we do actually have the handwritten letter. We have the gift plate, so we know it's part of the Stebbins collection. You have a name of a school that Moody was associated with. He was the founder of the Northfield Seminary. So this was written while he was connected with that. There's his signature, D.L. Moody.
Very nice.
So we do have some letters that we can go back to and say, okay, well, here is a primary document that refers to Stebbins and something that happened in his life or a relationship he had with someone who was also involved with this event, evangelistic music. So primary documents do exist in the collection, but you would not find them very easily because they aren't standing out in a public space. They're hidden in an envelope among the stacks.
They're
So-
part of. You mentioned the gift plate there, so that helps us with something that's called provenance.
Yes.
So clearly, these documents are part of that. So what is provenance?
Provenance is where did something come from? Whenever we have an item come into the library that's a gift or part of a collection, we want to know where was this before so that we can validate that it actually belonged to the person maybe that we're being told it belonged to. And so gift plates are a great way to track somebody's ownership. There's an item in the music library that's not Stebbins that is from 1565. The only connection that we were able to find is the gift plate, which is from John Stainer, who was a English composer and music educator at Cambridge. But the item actually belonged to John Stainer, which adds value because of his role in the history of music. So to be able to find a Stebbins gift plate helps us know that this is not just a letter that someone created, that Clayton or Ellenwood actually found this and validated that it was from Moody to Stebbins and that it had value in it. So.
All right. Well, I think we've covered this collection very well. We talked about the different types of documents, secondary and tertiary, and some primary. And we want to say thank you and join us again for Not Only Books.